we will make some progress. So item 54 are the people and teams and digital enabling plans. So Colleen and then Richard, if we could just have a brief introduction. Particularly interested in any responses or questions from the relevant committee chairs. I know that Rachel's not here, but anybody is from Board and Pauline, obviously from digital. Because there will be that focus in your committees where they drive this forward, but hopefully not to spend too much time on leave because it'll be the first time we've discussed this sort of stuff. So Colleen, please.
Thank you. Can possibly take the transcript on the screen. Is that okay? I don't know about anybody else. I find it's a tiny bit distracting. If I'm honest, I'd rather look at the. Thank you so much.
Over to you, Colleen.
So in relation to the discussions at POD, we had a detailed discussion at the previous POD meeting. So it isn't coming out here out of sequence. We have had a discussion at POD last meeting and there was no further iterations or suggested to the people and teams plan. The people and teams plan is most definitely people and teams. That is where our focus and energies are across the organisation on the teams. It includes all the RDaSH colleagues, so not just employees, so students, bank workers, the atypical workforce, students and such like. And it isn't all change within RDaSH. So we talked about things are changing in the level of pace within the organisation. Within the plan, we've said what's working well and the ABC. Interact the long cultivate within the plan. And we've identified 10 key measures that we will measure each of our 23 directorates upon. But this is a key enabling plan for us as an organisation because for numerous different reasons, colleagues don't necessarily have a natural affinity to some of the other plans, whereas the people and teams plan will be a key enabling plan for us across the organisation. It focuses on team and leaders at all levels within the organisation to harness the energy of leaders to make those sustainable changes within the organisation. So that's where we are driving our efforts and energy.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you for that. We'll take them individually, of course. Any questions to Colleen on this enabling plan? So it will be the first time we've seen it. Lots of this, but we do need to read it today.
I'm not very small, so contained in here, I think, I was quickly adding up there, something like 29 bullet pointed what is success type metrics. Could you just paint us a picture of how you see, I'm not answering mine, how you see that being tracked? Is that something the committee will focus on? Does it go to deliver reviews? Is it here?
I think it's a combination of all of those three. So at the previous people and OD meetings, we have had a discussion about how do we measure some of the success, and rather than focusing on all of the areas each and every meeting, we weave the committee reports into such a way that they capture the 10-point areas and then the wider points as part of the people and teams plan. So there will be some oversight from the POD committee. There will be an element of review and scrutiny though at the delivery reviews, and also an element of scrutiny and review at the other delivery reviews, not just the people and OD delivery review.
Oh yes,
The spread across the organisation, and also thinking about the success measures or failures. How do we bring those back here? You would see that natural flow coming through the POD report, but there'll be some oversight that just comes through here as well.
Right. I suppose where my question is, or that's where my comments are coming from. Yeah, I've been really struck the way in which Richard F and Steve F have been trying to use the quality safety plan to not just to frame the agenda, but also to stop other things creeping into the meeting. And I suppose I'm seeing the ABC and the 29 measures in here in a slightly similar line, because there's a gazillion things we could talk about in a people committee. Yeah, I would hope it focuses pretty ruthlessly on things in this plan and doesn't wander off.
I'm confident it won't wander off, and when we have a look at the papers, that will come to later on today, where we've got the committees and the forward look at the agenda. We've already had those discussions of how they will capture those points.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. No questions, no further questions and recognising that people in the RD committee will be concentrating very much on the delivery of this plan. Could we therefore, how are we doing? We're approving it, I think.
I hope so.
As opposed to just receiving it or nothing it. We are approving the people and teams plan. Can we do that, please?
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
that's 4 out of 8, Chairman. Well, it's 5 out of 8, depending on how
pressure.
in a minute. No problem, we'll get over the half.
On Richard, the digital plan.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And I'll take it that people have had a chance to read this, and I guess like the people plan, it has been to a number of other places, including twice to the Digital Transformation Group, twice to the Finance, Digital and the States Committee. It's interesting, reading this sort of cover sheet to me, because Toby narrated the cover sheet very, very finely, spoke these platforms. One of the phrases he uses on the cover sheet, I think, basically indicates that at its core, this plan is, I use a quote, is about the availability and use of quality data. And I can absolutely sort of see why that would be a reasonable statement to make. I think, you know, one of think about some of the really interesting conversation we've had today. Richard C has talked about work on waits and waiting times. Then it's talked about high quality care indicators and all the vehicles. His has told us a lot about how we use sort of local cost information to drive improvements. And all of that comes back to what Sarah was saying, which is about providing insight. So I think at the core, it is very much about data and how we make data available to people to facilitate whether they're trying to interact with us as a patient, whether they're trying to conduct their role as a member of staff, whether that's clinical or backbone. So a lot of the technology that we then talk about in the plan is very much about how we enable that data to flow. So just in terms of the plan, and say I'm very happy to take questions on it, but I think I'll try and head off Toby's question. He might ask me the same question he asked Carleen about where are we going to. So we've got a set of success measures in the plan, and these will be monitored through the digital transformation group starting in August. On the assumption that the board is satisfied with the plan today, we will start doing that. And then overall, the priorities and the deliverables in the plan will be reported through FDE in the same way we have in recent years with an annual review on the work against those priorities. So I'm happy to pause that point, Chair, and take any sort of questions on that.
Thank you. Ever a report was called enable this. It's the right timing, this is it. So thank you, Richard. Paul.
More comments than anything, but I was just going to the alignment of the 10-year plan. I know there's reference to that. Is it the approach you think, like Toby said earlier on, is we carry on with ours, we own this, we keep going, and then we'll make sure we align to the 10-year plan, but we're not going to get too distracted. Was there anything in the 10-year plan that you think we've missed that we do need to?
I'm really glad you asked me that. Actually. Going back to some of the earlier papers, the paper I think with the ICB summary around the plan, that identified 3 key things. One's around single patient record, one's around the NHS app, and one was around AI and uses AI scribes. And we cover all those off in the plan, so the alignment there is good. The bit where you may indulge me ever so slightly is that embracing technology, one of my colleagues decided to run our digital enabling plan through Microsoft Copilot and ask it how well it aligns to the autism plan. So I can give you the 4 bullet points that came out within the exec summary, and I'm telling you it's been positive. So the digital enabling plan 23 to 28 aligns strongly with the NHS 10-year plan 2023 to 2030. It supports digital transformation, community-based care, and proactive health management. The plan demonstrates maturity in digital inclusion, innovation, and interoperability. It positions RDaSH as a leader in digital healthcare delivery. All very nice. It talks about the key strengths of the digital enabling plan. So there's 4 of these: digital inclusion. So it talks about the multi-channel access, device banks, and digital literary support. Second one, human-centered design. So focus on usability, accessibility, and staff training. Third one, data and intelligence. So high data quality, maturity, index scores, dashboards, and clinical coding. And the fourth final was partnerships, collaboration with NHS England, ICB, and other tech providers. These are things that they've drawn out of the plan. There's other slides in here, and obviously, Microsoft Copilot, it does some slightly odd things, but it's first time we've tried to do something like that just to check out. And so rather than having something subjective I've made up, it's something that Microsoft has made up. So yeah, quite interesting.
Absolutely, 10 households to the hands, yeah. Martin, thank you. Are you
I'm
finished?
really going to add the other thing about the user plans. We're going to take specific areas as well, aren't we? FD. So I think it's artificial intelligence, pilot governance. So we can dig into some of it as well. So that's part of the.
Thank you, Paul. Richard Chilton.
Yeah. Three brief points, I suppose. This looks really good, I suppose. Not everyone will receive it in an exciting way. And so there'll be some who interpretation might be, oh, that means we can spend more time on computers. And I'll link it some, because I think I have a view that the more that we articulate things, being this plan, being productivity, or whatever we were talking about, is you will have more patient facing time, because we're going to do less time on computers. So while on the one hand we're talking about digital enablement, what it might support is you're going to have more time seeing a patient. Yeah, so I think we as a board have to link that more and more to more time seeing patients as we do other less bureaucratic things.
Can I come back on that?
Yeah, of course.
I totally agree. I think for me, it's a lot about how we promote and advertise things.
Yeah.
I think the releasing time to care thing has probably been around for quite a long time, and I don't know if there's something new and different we can different terminology that we can use, because there's a whole lot of initiatives that we've either done or we're involved in, things like the auto planner, the system one visualizations, the AI, the intelligent recap, and the ambient scribe, and auto planner. So a lot of stuff where we know that they're all being designed to release clinicians' time to spend more time with the patient, less time traveling, less time on the computer, less time writing. But they're very much seen as technical interventions as opposed to transformational or improvements. So I think for me, it's how we come up with a way of badging things that draw people to them, rather than thinking those IT guys again trying to make it do something.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have seen where it's worked really well, but then there was a singular obsession. So they basically linked it to, you've now got 4 more minutes on this, you've now got 2 more minutes on that. Literally going. So by doing all this, we've created, you as a GP, you have 10 minutes per day on it was literally as basic as that. We've created 10 more minutes. So it's very simple. I think also just to manage all our excitement a little bit, I sound like that because I'm really interested. Cora literally yesterday or early this week said we were hoping in the autism space or the ADHD that the AI would really help with that. It's not quite got there yet. So I think we're loading a lot of transformation onto what this can produce. I still think it's not all going to be better tomorrow, so I think there's time to do that. I think the other bit for you, is translating strategy into action. Your team is not massive. We're all very excited about lots of things. You've got lots of my team going, can I have this, and I want this, and I want this. People in here doing exactly the same. So I think there's a real challenge of capacity versus ambition in a way. And I suppose just talking us a bit through how that will be managed.
Yeah. I think we've got opportunities now, I think, with a slightly different approach to governance through digital transformation for people to bring forward ideas. And we've used that forum to facilitate external speakers, whether it's people talking about digital workforce, talking about patient engagement portals, talking just about ways that we can engage with other NHS organisations on things like AI and data quality. So for me, it's about having the opportunity to bring those items forward, understanding where they fit to the overall priorities that we've already expressed in the plan. And then if it's something which would fall within the existing capacity, how do we prioritise that against the other things that we know we need to be doing? Or how do we get behind that in terms of our investment fund process? Because what we do know is that tech doesn't come cheap. And you know, I think it's something we need to be mindful of the board.
The other two.
Nothing.
I've got Richard happy to.
But I was the latest way I discussed it. So about co-pilot, across my mind when you treating pages, what happens if you just call this line as co-pilot? Again, but I just repeat something and the danger is. No, but the danger is that would give all of us the same answer. Board pain. So that homogenisation is not going to be good for the board discussion. Not specific to your digital planning, but when some of these AI learning is only as good as the initial. Is there a danger that we're actually developing a biased model, or how? Yeah, I mean, the biased model essentially we choose to put in what AI learns from.
Yeah, and you know, I'll offer an answer, Richard, but I'm not an AI expert. It's something that I'm very keen to learn more about, because obviously the way that healthcare is going, clearly looking at enhancing it for all sorts of administrative and clinically supported roles. So in terms of, it says, what's the data lake that we're dipping into? I think that's sort of part of your question. Well, just starting to understand that the Microsoft Copilot license that has been sort of piloted in that we're licensed to be made available to NHS trusts, including ours, and then UX back by NHS England. They've done perhaps let the genie out of the bottle a bit too quickly, and Microsoft said, well, you're giving our product away for free, now we're going to pay for it. I know that's been recorded. So when I think part of the governance around that is when Copilot licenses do come back out to us, there'll be some sort of firewall around what the data lake is that it's drawing from. So there's a little bit of data security around that. Now I need to go away and understand that a lot better. But there's the difference between saying use something like ChatGPT, take you out, you know, onto the internet, and it'll have a boundless to what Copilot might have. I think that helps.
Yeah, thank you. Kathy.
Thank you. It's very ambitious in the time frame, isn't it? You know, I think that's great. And don't get me wrong, I mean, but I think there's some sort of codependencies, and we've got to be able to work across and through. And you know, take the stuff that actually is pretty productive time. So I was just thinking things like a single record, those things will probably go in your, you know, system or wider pace, won't they? So at some point, and I'm sorry if I miss things, but just understand that, you know, that landscape, media context that we're in terms of success of this. And I will just share that whilst we're just touching on AI, so for my own CPD, I joined an AI thing, and I can share the notes for it immediately. But this guy's a very opposite, which is question. And he's working with NHS organisations, I think Bristol Way, and they're putting lots of their processes, their patient flows, they're putting stuff through AI, and they are coming out with, you know, rerouting and efficiencies and, you know, ways of sort of working, which are having really significant results. So I might just share that out interest. I don't know the value of it in terms of its worth.
We do the same.
Are you doing the same?
But do share it, of course, but
Okay,
just-
well, that's great.
just not to imagine we
That's
haven't
great. I didn't know,
done
I didn't know that
No,
knowledge.
that's true.
that, you know, I
No,
learned about.
It's always been
So, yeah, but I really love it, really support it. Wants to do that, there's just bits of the plan. Stuff, yeah, just house and.
Sure. Got comments like too, that's because I sort of made a point at the back of the plan, which will, be supported, which will, so, sort of, and I suppose, at some point in the next 8 months, is as me and possibly somebody else presumably will come and ask the board to spend, I don't know, let's call it £25 million on a variety of buildings. And yeah, when we do that, one of the things we'll need to assure ourselves of is that the £25 million that we've got couldn't be spent on technology. Given that we've already committed to technology. So I suppose what I'm anticipating will happen next is that you and Isaz will mine this document to work out what the potential costs are. That isn't said in order to stop us approving it. I'm very happy to approve it now.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be in a place, and I might have had this experience 10 years ago of trying to get a large scale capital fund through, thinking we should spend it on clicks, not bricks. So I think it's a little bit of work. I appreciate we'll be back of a, well, maybe you can put it into the code and see what comes out, but it'll be back of a fag packet about things we've grown. What do we think? Yeah, pretend we were proving everything in this plan to actually happen in the time frame. What do we think that might cost us?
Yeah.
So it doesn't stop me approving the plan today or split, but I think it's something we need to be cognizant of before we make a mistake.
Yeah, and I think we're reasonably clear, in the next 12 to sort of 36 months in terms of that kind of critical part and what those investments need to be, particularly capital replacement program.
Yeah, sure.
So I think we do. I think, you know, we kind of map that out internally within the team.
Okay.
So yeah, very happy to get together with Isaz.
Is that okay? Yeah, the reality is if we find a, well, let's say, find a way around the scene, find a way through the scene, might be better. We've got a cash bar, we're going to look to spend quite a lot of it. Yeah, the risk is that there's an opportunity cost in that we go to the bricks, not the bricks. And that's what I want to talk about. I'm a big supporter of what's in it. Thanks for our work.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So can we agree to the digital enabling plan? Thank you. And Ali will have those comments from.
I was thinking Phil, which did a minute so
I didn't notice that.
What do you think?
What do you think that?
I look forward to it. It's very surprising. Yeah.
We go to the routine reports at this point. Could I ask Richard, I'm assuming, to kick off with the integrated quality performance report? Richard, just highlights, please, as usual.
Slightly distracting London. Speaking about two patients of ours they have. Okay, so this is obviously the other thing I just wanted to comment on. I suppose as we get maturer in this, there are themes of this in different areas. So you'll note in the committee updates there were references to their domain.
Yeah.
So I think it's really helpful that, you know, we've got committees looking at specific areas of their quality. So, and I see it referenced in other places. The other thing I forgot to mention around point supporting is we will be, Toby and I, looking at the Noble 9 potentially, of which there'll be some changes, of which having waiting list updates against the trajectory and the paper today, quarterly, will be hopefully in the IQPS. Just to sort of know that. Joe,
No, I'll take that.
yeah, okay, so there are two elements of this as we sort of enrich data. So just going to read the front sheet. So pod, I think the reason why we've highlighted, so sickness from a person who's been in health, 5.1%. However, it's in terms of the segmentation, it's really, we've marked quite negatively high on the benchmarking based on the January data. So in terms of really focusing on that, it's a really important area, not just what starts with work, but also in terms of our segmentation scoring. So it's quite interesting to see how heavily weighted it was. I think we've got 2 budgets, so talking therapies, the access rate, I just want to say, is going up. It's more than it was this time of year, so that's helpful. We're not quite there yet, but I think it's really helpful to know the work they're doing. CYP services is a little bit behind. It's a national, and I'm not overly worried about that. It's generally behind. We're taking on tuning the service from the DRI in terms of ASD. So once those contacts are going on, we'll be there. So that's why I'm not overly fussed about that. And it's just to sort of, once they start flowing through. SMI's continued area of focus, I think, particularly as we try to get to one list, which is the list original, because we had 4 lists before, which quant is the one list. I know that might be influenced by the GP contract, but we're carrying on as we are for now. And it's in the spirit of continual improvement. I think even small things like this, we've bought point of contact blood tests, which I think is that a pinprick kind of thing, rather than people like me who get scared with needles. So they're introducing those for the key services where they're doing SMI, because there's 8 domains, and actually blood testing is one of the lowest domains. I think people just don't like to go blood taking. So point of care testing is our improvement. So again, in the spirit of always learning, I thought that was a really nice little example. We've already talked a bit about the racist instance and why it's dropped. Let's triangulate that with other areas. And I think we've already talked to the finances, I suppose, in the plan update. So we reported, let's end on good news. We reported 7 inappropriate out of area placements for the month, which this time last year was something like 28, I think, or 25, something like that. So that is good improvement, although how it feels the last 2 days, I'm sensing that I know that's already going up, so we're on a bit of a podcast with that. But for June, it's a positive. Strong. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions to the academia? Yes, Paul, just.
Well, on vacancies, I see that it's currently running at 5.5% against our target, but I can see the reasons with the new community rehabilitation and high dependency. But if you took those out of it, underlying, would we still be around 2.5?
We'd be about 130 posts.
So we aim for 100, don't we? So yeah, so that's a
We'd be
feel.
about 130
Right,
posts.
okay.
There's a wing colour and current services
Right,
as there
yeah.
seems to be about how they represent.
Right.
You'd be about that.
But we're on good step.
That's all good.
Okay. In that case, thank you, Richard, and we'll agree to receive the academia. Over to you,
Yeah,
Charlie.
in some ways, I think slightly set the paper aside for a second, not just because people to it as Joe's did. And the pertinent points are we're finally able to report the data. That's fantastic. If you scroll through all 160 odd pages, good luck and thank you. But what Ray and Joe have then done is gone through and just pointed out variation. That is just variation. It's not statistically significant. It's not really. I would suggest the board should take a couple of things. One, we've got a little bit of work to do on ethnicity coding before you can have a meaningful conversation. There are a list of services in there where there is apparent discrepancy, possibly reasonable discrepancy, but until you got to 99.9% of data, you're probably speculating. So that's conclusion 1. The second one, which seems to be written through the paper, is that in a lot of cases we're seeing more people from the most deprived wards as against the balance. In a nice possible way, I would imagine that's just largely both what you would expect, given that we're a health provider, and secondly, a good thing. But clearly, we'd look at a bit of thinking about whether it's sufficient. and understand where there is analysis of data, what you would expect. So I suppose that's two different points. There's an internal one about sorting out the errors. So doesn't invalidate the analysis per se is important. And there's an external one about forming a view about what level of I'm going to say over-representation of people from the most deprived communities, but I don't mean that. I just mean bigger. You would actually expect in services. I'm making sense. That's where I'd encourage, but I think what Joe's after, and it may be best outside the room, is if people have a bit and want to fire questions, do. Because this reminds me of when we started with death statistics as an NHS. We got lots of red flags and all the rest of it. Most of them are just red flags. Well, let's ask about them and make sense of that. So I think that's where we are. And as I say, thank you to Richard and Steve in particular for getting us to a point where we can comply with our legal duties.
Absolutely.
That's what Richard.
I mean, might, I mean, the recommendations saying, do we agree with the conclusions that fall?
Well, I wouldn't encourage you to agree with conclusions of that one. I would encourage you to see if there are points on the two I've made that are in the minds of the board. Because I think simply saying there are more people but it's just nothing than the average. Well, I'm not a guess, but I mean, so I could think about it. What does that help me? I wouldn't say that as a
And it's important to, I think, for the board to note and agree or approve or something the next step. We're okay with what happens. So, but Richard,
Actually, point Terry about not drawing conclusions of statistical significance. We continue to put percentages against small numbers.
Yeah.
And it just frustrates me because if it's not statistically significant, then not listening. So that's about put the numbers in, the raw numbers in, but to say that something went up 600% because it went from 1 to 6.
Yeah. So is your point, let's have raw numbers?
I think raw numbers are great, but where we can draw significance. I mean, the biggest bet there were hundreds of something reported, and therefore you can draw some significance from it. And then further down there were 10 incidents reported. You can't draw anything from that. So I guess it's just making sure we have percentages to things that looking absolute terms rather than relative to
The wrong. Yes, I'm happy to take that up with the consultant.
yes, Kevin.
I just, I mean, I just thought that there might be people statistically in more than one of these categories. So I was kind of going down a cause effect thought line. And I didn't know, therefore, I wasn't sure I could, you know.
You say more than one of these categories, including somebody
Yeah.
female and a Welsh or would you?
And in most of, you know, so it could, so it's the cause effect. So it could be, you know, do you not expect perhaps that, you know, maybe in most deprived area, maybe if it's a single parent, whichever, that's in, but if it was female in most deprived area and so on, and with not much support network, perhaps, because dominantly why, you know, it just like, well, what would you expect, you know, if they're looking at certain services, if they, so I was way more nuanced, which wasn't right, but so I don't know whether that actually it's easy to draw very much, sort of this stage. I mean, it is exciting, but I guess I was just.
One of the things that hold us back, and Maria's raised this, I think, in just about every public health committee so far, is in so far as poverty and deprivation, this is my framing, are disproportionately important against most other indices. I've had this debate with lots of public health people. They said this D is potentially very important, but it's nowhere near as important as poverty in terms of the depth of data we have about poverty is terrible. effectively it's your postcode and a 10 years ago census that says the large area red has, now that's less of a problem here than it will be in London. It's less of a problem in Doncaster than it is in North Wales, but it's a real problem. We do not collect meaningful data on people's effective economic status. Now, with the Dialogue Plus work that we do, we intend to link it to debt advice. We are asking a mandatory question about that. So in due course, for our attending population, we will have more meaningful data about people's economic circumstances. But what I would remind Seskin, we keep doing this for a bit. And then potentially we get a couple of statistical experts, public health people, etc., in and say, right, you know, what we're missing. You've got to run a data, what we're missing. But I'm still going to insist it comes to the board. So we can all look at it and go, why haven't you changed your percentages yet? Or we need to be a bit more nuanced, all of which I think you've good stuff.
Thank you.
Because at some point we'll miss some.
Yeah, absolutely. And I take your point about economic data.
Yeah, all the while perinatal and health service provides to people to pay for occasion background. So
There's lots of assumptions out there of people perhaps. Thank you. So we received the report. And simply, I think, say that the work needs to continue. That will reappear at the board in
next time,
September.
standard report, but minus percentages.
No, thank you. Can we agree that? Are you all happy with the way we're going with this? Flashing to the promises scorecard, Toby, please.
So first of all, obviously, the policy came out so dangerously late, I hope that makes people have a chance to read it separately. 26 of 70 indicators currently have a plan delivery score that is red or amber. Red, 28 have a likelihood of delivery score that is red or amber red. There is quite a lot of movement of scores this time. And it may be that there may be some design tweaks to better illustrate for board members where it's gone up or down.
Yeah.
To follow that. Carly's already referenced that, 4 of the redder areas are in the pillars of apprentice, promise 9. There is a clustering of the red bits around particular things. So in that sense, I think it's relatively easy to wrap your mind around it. I think the paper then illustrates that we will come back next time on promise 1. In terms of promise 3, we are getting there with having clarity of data. We are aiming to separate the existence of roles from definitely having volunteers. I think at this point we would be more confident that we have roles sufficient to meet promise 3 than we have volunteers sufficient to meet promise 3. But I think probably what is important to share with the board is that having listened to all 6 groups, that there is real commitment to getting to this point, and I think everybody has north of 50 roles in their market. Doncaster Adult Mental Health probably got that furthest journey yet to travel. Children's physical health and corporate are over the line, and in particularly Rotherham, which has moved furthest. I think we're starting to, from where they were to where they are now, we're starting to see real enthusiasm, good stories around volunteering. So that's where we are. I don't really want to predict exactly where we'll be in September. I feel like between us, since January, we've had some ups, we've had some downs, so that's it. But yeah, what we will be in September is working with definitely accurate data. We go back to Dr. Forbes' introduction of the public health cover sheet. Yeah, as the exec group clearly need to reflect on across the 28 promises. If data is a core MTC, which promises have we got data for, which don't you need data for, and which haven't we got data for, and how do we get them done? It'll become a little bit late to getting the data set sorted out for promise 3, and I'll own that as the. Is that all right? But I always enjoy people saying, what about this promise? Because it usually means we haven't thought about it or done it. So I'd welcome that in the time we've got, which seems like we've got quite a lot of time, so that'd be good.
Got 3/4 of an hour.
Oh, not just this.
No, not just-
Well, committee agendas.
No,
Oh, yeah, that line by line, but,
3/4 of an hour in the public.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Any questions?
I think if nobody else is going to have just some comments on the 7-day week service. Because I think that's absolutely crucial to what we're doing and our hours and everything else on the planet. And it says it's like people just do a breathe rent.
Yeah. But, so what that doesn't is we aren't providing services on a Saturday or a Sunday. What it does is the implication of the promise is that there will be quite a significant flattening or stabilisation between weekdays and weekends. So as we sit here today, we haven't completed the gap analysis of where we are. I think that's completable over the next, I'm looking to Steve, it's in your chambers, and it's completable over the next 2 or 3 months. And then going into next year's investment fund, we need to formally work out what is necessary. Clearly, one area of that is the HQTC and introducing weekend discharge and weekend admission. I think again, in 2 or 3 months' time, we will have an understanding of whether things we've already begun to do are getting us weekend discharge and weekend admission, or whether we're going to need something else. And if we need something else, is there a barrier to, so in a physical health hospital, or can't possibly discharge on something gives you a pharmacist, so, yeah, I'm not a pharmacist. So yeah, working those things through. But the reason it's currently marked as red is we haven't got a plan 2 to 3. But also, as is reflected in the STR, that this is quite hard because there's a risk that we say, and this is pertinent to the conclusion independent reviews, isn't it? Right, let's job plan everybody in for a Saturday afternoon and Sunday morning. It's all fine. We do that, could afford it. We'll double our consultant vacancy rate because you can go Nottingham, Swift, Nottingham, Swift or Sheffield, who will guarantee you and your loved one that you will have to work a weekend. So that's why it's in SDRs. It's think once we've done the analysis and worked out what the interventions need to be, we then need to have a conversation about, okay, do we really want to do this? Or which bits do we want to do that might be just about all right and don't drop us off the end? But yeah, the board should be under no illusion. If you present on a Saturday, you get a radically different service than you present on a Thursday. So to give one very explicit example of that, if my 14-year-old son presented in A&E this afternoon, he would be able reasonably rapidly to access a specialist child psychiatrist. If he presented on Sunday morning, his best chance to get a child psychiatrist would be Monday. He would get some child support over the weekend, but nothing more. So I think it's absolutely why we have this sport.
I think that's absolutely right. You hear it constantly from community and public, don't you, that they would expect the service over the weekend to be the same. They would expect that response on a Sunday that we would get on the.
But I think we're going to need to be choiceful as a leadership group, in and beyond board about, okay, it needs to be best than it is now. But if we really are going to make it uniform, we really need to work through the costs and consequences of that. And do we want to do that as a system rather than as a service? Do we best do it by saying you can't get on a Wednesday? Because part of the problem of the weekend isn't the Saturday and the Sunday, it's the Saturday and the Sunday.
Yes.
So you can't get it on Wednesday because we do Tuesday and Thursday and then we work 2 days together. Am I making sense? Yeah. So you're on the right stuff. And I guess what I wanted to get across is I'm not relaxed that it's red, but of all the reds in there, it's probably one of the ones I'm more relaxed about because I think we need to take a right run at that in the way I've tried to describe.
No, thank you. Useful. Anyone else? If not, we'll receive the update on the promises and look forward to further updates. Okay, thank you. Bill, board and committee agendas to March next year.
We've been waiting for it.
This is what I've been waiting for.
Well,
It is, and thank you for that. The paragraph on the cover sheet speaks for itself in terms of that it is, it's good governance, it's good forward planning, it helps the chairs, it helps authors. We know what we're talking about, we know what we're doing. Things change, so from time to time we may need to flex on that, but essentially committees are asked by the board to undertake a number of tasks that are in terms of reference. These are the plans that are set out that are going to achieve that. I think today there's been, and I think the conversation just before around the plans and to develop that. I think we probably just need to make sure we're articulating that consistently across committees and making sure that we're clear on how they're going to have that oversight plans within there. And think about, I think Terry, you referred to the way Steve and Richard on the thematic work for the QC agenda. We can look to replicate that and make sure that we're consistent across there. There obviously are a number of standing out if we think we add to those, but essentially these are presented now so that we've got a good run for the next few meetings, and our intention is to continue to keep that on a rolling process, and we're always 4 or 5 meetings in advance that could help with the planning for that, and as I said, the authorship of the papers, because we know now what is due in many times. I think preempting a question from Dr. Holt, who sort of slightly tipped me off before about just perhaps a little bit of a piece of work within the team that just makes sure that when we have been refining these committee meet agendas, that where there were additional things that were regularly covered, perhaps by what committee in particular, we'll just try and make sure the committee cited on that those are the 7 things that you'll know and all the looking at, which we know that they're happening. Quality and safety.
So it's the point that is documented, not that philosophical shift is documented, but that we can say this subject is now dealt with in this committee, because that sounds very sensible. I thought we'd already agreed that some time ago, so yeah.
To just get that.
Okay.
Okay, so as the cover sheet sort of implies, have we missed or overlooked anything, or is there a duplication of that? Are you happy to work with these? As I said, they've not set absolute targets as well, but they are a very good basis about the business of the board and the committee.
You know, I hope it helps all people, regardless of this meeting or in fact on tier 2. Just to plan around that and to know what to be expected and inform for it. Some structure. Where am I? Richard. Yeah. I thought I saw a hand go before.
No,
Well, actually, you've got a comment.
Yeah. Sneeze. This is structured, I suppose, and I suppose some of kind of my thoughts about today, or some of the observations are is, as we discussed, well, say we get this done by this. There's the PDSA stuff that I think is coming through for me a bit about understanding that some's going to really fly and some might not, and what we learned from that. And I wondered if there was just us as a board having a conversation about how that feels, I suppose. Because some people will be very focused on the KPI, and everyone says we should, but there's going to be some bits that fall off the side, and how we reach that and have conversations about just thought.
I take your point. Interesting how board agendas work, or committee agendas work, and whether or not you need time within that, something like production time, for the wriggle room to relax and talk. And the board time outs to that, please don't get me wrong, but this particular CPC this week where we had a very big agenda because everyone was very quiet. Then we had a very big agenda when everybody was very not quiet, so we didn't get through it. We'll find the balance, but there is something about time for the board to talk. I understand what you're saying, Richard. But you know, allow some space. Richard.
Started in the position of, I was nothing on there, and my assurance of Steve is I think that's the overarching bit of the where it came to be. But I think the other part of this that wasn't necessarily reflected in there is that the action log will probably become a bigger part of agendas because we'll say, oh, we want to see that in a couple of months' time.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas often the action log is posted forms.
Yeah.
And quicker than people, and it does go to the root of what we're trying to achieve, which is that deep time. So, yes. Yeah, depending on that.
Kathy, then Toby, unless you're on that point, Toby, which.
No, I'm happy to work it out. It's like,
Kathy,
I just wanted to double check, so this is silent about the audit. That's intentional, so.
But for this purpose, but conscious that the audit committee, I think is, it's working train in the same way. But I think it's scope of internal audit, external audit, and things. I think we can more easily do it.
Right, but I don't know whether for complete, so we're just like, that's out, wait, but, you know, I was just trying to get that right. But I kind of thought that there were a couple of things, you know, about, in terms of the business on the audit committee, there's the education, there's the research, and there's the, do a little bit binding out, chemical, expansion. So it was just sort of things that they haven't all appeared in the only place specifically named. So I guess that's going on underneath this. They have to do something to talk about today.
Well, we've not included the audit committee's plan here, but all that you said, definitely, the reference, the worldwide.
It's really the others. The other committees where relevant, they've still got other things, just as Richard said, clarifying that thing.
yeah,
so we can tell you about 2 or 3. So one, the audit committee should have been here and is here, so it needs to be here. Because part of the purpose of doing this is to get to a position where particularly directors know what papers are coming over 6 to 8 months. If you have a wander around the corridor headquarters now, you'll see that that is listed along the wall. So that's the first thing. So I apologise, the audit committee is not there. We will get it here next time. I don't think there is duplication involved between the audit committee and anything else, but I'm very happy to pick that up outside the audit committee is focused on governance of clinical audits, governance of education and research. That's not the same as the work of the quality committee or the people involved. Two final points, Chair. The papers of the board committee stand in the name of the director, not somebody else. So the people in OD agenda there need to recast it. And the reason that's important is that all of us contribute to all of the committees. So Richard Chillery came to the Public Health Committee, even though he's not a member of the Public Health Committee. And I think that's a really important discipline that we can all be called to different committees. And my final point is back to the board. I'm anticipating that board committees ask questions, raise issues, but that the doing has to deliver reviews in other places, not through board committees. They are board committees.
Yeah.
So then if that process is either not understood or doesn't feel like it's working, then we need to spend some time on how that transit works. Because otherwise every committee will accumulate a huge action log of stuff to do and an endless tracking, and people will experience being tracked by a board committee and by a delivery review and somewhere else. So I'm keen that we get those handoffs from board committees really clear. Because historically that isn't how it's worked at RDaSH, and that's how we said it would work.
I mean, as chair, absolutely. Execs and board committees are not doing places. So it's one where we had a regional northeastern Yorkshire chairs and chiefs meeting yesterday, and they started talking about the appointment of chairs, and there was a moment where I thought an appointment of chief executive.
Yeah, sure.
And that traditional difference between what we all bring and why and how, what our role is worked for a reason over a lot of years, and the last thing you want to do is turn, in fact, tier 2 board committees into places where you where it becomes operational, and it's not its job.
Yeah,
wording that in terms of, not that we would go away and do the work to review it ourselves in 2 months, 4 months time, but we would ask the question of does the COS so
Yes,
where it
yeah,
is,
sure.
and have that report.
Yeah, absolutely. Spot on. Yeah. Well,
So just to clarify, so I'm looking at my CPF, agenda to August, and it ties in with this, which is great. But I've still got the SDR on it, and I've still got an internal audit progress update on, which is fine, isn't it? So, you know, it's small, yeah, not small, important items, but these are more the meaty things.
Yes, it-
Okay, this is required, yeah, just to make sure. That's very helpful, thank you, it's helped me today, so.
yeah, thank you. Richard.
Yeah, it's just one from I think it's in the missing bucket, I think it's March 26th, and we're looking for a cyber security update on what
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, it's not.
And September,
I'm thinking,
cybersecurity is meant to come twice.
yeah,
okay.
So that's what the TLR said in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you get cyber as well. That's the second year. So, my fault.
Richard.
Sorry, I am very distracted by the Fed stuff at the moment. Sorry about that. I know this is about the committee, so I'm sure it's on the timetable. Obviously, we've got to have EPR call in
September.
September. Yeah.
September board, which is in advance of the final submission. That works better than having it in November, which is after.
After the thing, yeah.
So it may move a little bit between September submission, which will be 89%, and yeah, November and all the rest of it. But that's where we're at.
We've had
With that, can we move to receive these? With pleasure, and we'll note the comments that have been made around the board table. Thank you. We'll-
I'm not sure I want to open up the whole BDSA conversation here, not this side of it. I just want to, I think, I mean, it's helpful to still the educational learning board. I think that must be what it is. And I guess the vibe feel should be going to deliver this stuff. If we don't, that's absolutely fine. But I'll put, but that's absolutely fine. Provided we've done the work and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? What I think we should expect of ourselves is that we've done the work and it didn't work, and then we learn, which I think is, yeah, as distinct from, and then the word I said as distinct from, you know, and I think that's absolutely fine. We've done the work, it didn't work.
yeah, no, that is what I mean. I'm going to add a little extra little bit, which is, can you provide assurance on this? And I think that's not always the right question.
100%. 100%.
So that's where I'm getting at, is, are you doing everything that you're doing? Can you,
Yeah.
they give clarity about what's happening? And I can demonstrate that one's fallen off the table for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, and Damien's phrase is clarity, not certainty, and I think that's helpful. It's a helpful phrase, Damien's phrase. Clarity, not certainty, because don't guarantee lots of won't work. I'm not going to give you assurance about disengagement. You know, so I don't think these females give absolute guarantees, but we do need to have clarity. And there are areas we talk about where it is profoundly unfair. And that's what we've got to get at.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. So with routing those very important comments, we'll move to the strategic delivery risk assessment 28.
This is my favourite. So.
Bill.
Thank you. Strategic delivery risks that we have are presented within the paper. In a little similar way to what Steve did earlier on, I think, and in terms of the SDR being going, it's really good that we have talked about partnerships, culture development, and staff. We talked about GP liaison, the learning that we're doing with them. We talked about the 7-day work. We've talked about lots of things, which is good, but these are essential. The risks that we said were the biggest to the chief development strategy. We've talked about the work plans and how the delivery of the reference, delivery of the promises is in here, and that pictured within the committee forward plans. And it talks in here, I think we're getting better at identifying the gap and what we are doing about it by when. in a slightly untimely way, Kathy and I will meet the executive leads next week to have our quite a triannual conversation about that, and we'll be really pushing on that. And I have noted on the cover sheet about risk owners remaining cautious about hitting the target score. So I think that's one we need to pick up in particular next week in the presentation about understanding the path from where we are now to our desired reduction in risk. And that's certainly one of the things that in that internal audit as well about having that path forward. The final point is, again, linking back to one of the things that the internal audit suggested, which was having a timely look at the list to make sure they remain as the biggest risk to our strategy. And I think this is the second time that we've come here and indicated that in line with Toby's Guinness analogy, we would take the time to reflect on the 10-year plan and to see whether or not it has a material impact on strategy and therefore the risks for us of achieving that strategy. And we'll come back next time with a sort of conclusion or suggestion around that, albeit I think the conversation so far today indicated that our forward look is broadly in line and certainly not at odds with the 10-year plan. So won't preempt the answer to that conclusion. But the 5 lead execs are here as well. So if there are any specific questions, we'll set that forward and we'll receive it next time after we've had the further review.
Any questions on strategic risks or the content?
I think there'll be a big conversation next time we've done with health because they do think some of the target delivery as a centre of their public health. I think some of the target delivery days will shift backwards. And I think as owners, we need to answer the question, okay, so when in March, when would it be? And that's fine, it could be early March 27. I can live with that. But I think we've done enough thinking about it to tell you as well, we can crystallise down to that level.
So we receive the report and indeed know that the next time we see this, it's likely to be a bigger discussion, given that those meetings will take place. Thank you. And to the operational risk report.
Okay, thank you. So this the shift from previous reports on this that really is regarding the appetite of the use of appetite in our risk management. So probably oversimplifying it, in the past we've essentially focused here on any risk that scored 15 or more, just simply because that was its risk score. The use of the appetite statements, if you recall the work we did at the time out and the improvement of the framework last time, brings in a different dynamic in that it recognises the appetite was set and therefore where a risk might be a lower score of 15 but outside of that appetite, that is something we tend to give attention to. In the time since the board last saw this, we've also moved over to RDaSH as the system on which we use risk management. So I guess in a way we are right in the midst of a quite significant change around both the system and the way in which we're managing it. And what we've highlighted here, and will be the subject of more work at risk management group in a couple of weeks' time, and certainly the two meetings before the board meets again, is capturing that much bigger number, 60 risks that are outside of tolerance, and really starting to drive a conversation about the risk leads there about getting some assurity on the actions that they're taking to close that. And just to digest that, because again, I think there's an element of the change the system. I have no pre-ideas of whether or not the figure will be 61 or 20 risks that were outside of appetite. To come out of that is quite sizable, but we need some time to work through that. And then we'll get into a better rhythm of coming back to the board. And instead of saying these are the 4 or 5 that's 15, we will find the whatever the number is that says these are outside of appetite and perhaps outside of appetite, and we are particularly at risk management, we're saying, but not really got a plan or a clear path towards mitigating it. They would be the ones that now become the risks of concern, unfortunately. I have included within the paper the 5 former extreme risks that we saw. You can see that I think it's three within the tolerance, so probably in new money wouldn't have featured here. 2 are still outside of that tolerance. relating to ADHD and autism, which again, we've talked a lot about today and recognising the difficulties we're faced with in that area. So again, there's an element of cross-reference to what we're talking about. But as I said, risk management group will meet a couple of times before the board next sees this. And I look forward to any response to different approach and questions.
To draw our attention to that, let's say, I should preface by that we support and new approach, but I'm just going to illustrate something. You also the burst on intended continues. Insufficient capacity for demand for ADHD is when it escalates things when you've got low tolerance for each amount of officers. Something like that. Waiting times for ASD for children and young people getting delayed diagnosis isn't escalated because it's a moderate tolerance because we've decided that's a patient experience matter. I'm struggling to see why that. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I just think there's a I can't get anywhere. There's common sense check that somebody then needs to overlay of have we ended up in the wrong place? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
As a layperson, that looks precarious because it appears to arise entirely because of what subcategory it's been put in, even though on the face of it, it's the same thing.
And I think that's the bit about the way in which the risks are usually written in sort of the three parts. When it's the capacity that the cause of the waiting list is something, which is therefore the deliberate capacity, whereas it's the waiting list that potentially causing the poor experience.
I understand why to come about. I'm just saying if the system is very reliant now on subcategorisation, really comfortable with. I think we've just got to be really confident that subcategorisation isn't throwing us off.
Right. Yeah.
And the way you present it allows me to say that, which is helpful. So it feels transparent, but I just think it's going to be quite poor.
Yeah, and I think taking that on board, I think that the concept of risk management of how do we start to look at those 61? It could well be category right, scoring right, appetite. Yeah. Thank you.
And we're just on one of the extremes, I assume, given crucial to what one job in the Doncaster adult mental health care, there's a Doncaster adult mental health care group, it's like service, shortly telling the risk management committee and other things, it's an experience.
That one has definitely been.
That's fine. I've never liked to be in there in the first place. As you know, so, yeah.
Any further questions on the operations? Not, I'm agree to receive it. Thank Phil. Under the format. Thank you. That would we move to the sporting papers, which we don't discuss, as you know, because they have been to previous committees. They are listed there as agenda item 30. Just to remind people that if they do have questions that they need to highlight to the board and write us out these reports, then please let us know before meetings. But other than that, we don't debate them. Can we agree to receive those reports? They have been discussed in the previous meetings.
I'm supportive. I was just going to ask Phil, which I don't think is a question I need to notice. Do you think we might have got to the end of the list of annual reports last year that I was enjoying?
That you always enjoy later on.
Sure. I mean, I don't mind if there was one more in September, but I'd be quite reluctant in November and January and March. I'd be debating last year.
Dermot is waving furious.
I bet. Go on then.
Just to disappoint Toby, with the annual revalidation appraisal paper, the reporting structure has not been agreed by NHS England yet. And so I'd worked on what they'd sent last year.
Okay.
Having learned my lesson that they changed this
Yeah.
and having to resubmit it, I'm now waiting to receive the update.
That doesn't disappoint me because I'd already controlled for doctor exceptions. So I'm okay with that. I think we have managed to abolish the complaints annual reports as being an unnecessary thing. Are there any others that people are still desperately holding out to bring? That one is necessary.
There's nothing that springs to mind.
I'm looking at Steve.
I've
No
received
more.
safeguarding quality accounts at the health and safety,
So there are no more.
as long as complaints is,
I've told complaints, I think probably not in my most perfect English, that I did not need a, like, tell you report.
and no more from me.
That's fine.
Then we
Well
will,
done, well done.
we'll note that, thank you. I'm on to any other urgent business. Anything happened in the last 4 hours that we need to know about?
Let's say. Oh, no, we do not need to hear about the beds turning wall London again. You're taking me back about 12 years, mate.
Plans for the two.
It used to work when I was there, I tell you.
Just
Thank you, Richard.
Well
done, are there any risks arising out of this agenda that anyone wishes to? Yes.
Can I just question two? They're relatively minor. One is, we've spoken in various places, just believe me, we have over this meeting about independent review solution. We've got work going on, which probably will take till the next board meeting to conclude. That is captured somewhere in our risk register, is it, that we are not providing consistently in that review? If not, could the RMG check?
Yes.
Second one, which I was very grumpy when Kathy raised it about our ability to report carbon, so on and so forth. I know your point was brought. Can we just check that we have captured that one somewhere?
Yeah.
That's the risk that we are.
Not able to accurately report our carbon position. Because technically, statutory, the quality of stuff you can swear at, but technically we are obligated to report our carbon position. And we can report our carbon position, we just need a little bit of confidence it's accurate.
Any further items that anyone arising out of today's discussion, please? Need to entry into the risk register. Good. Phil, have we any questions from the public? We haven't. Thank you. Then I will resign.
Opinion for that, Adrian. Sending your board question.
Yeah, that's of course.
I'm
built into the agenda.
Yeah, I get that, but I mean, yeah.
Questions
we
to
need
the
to get
agenda.
questions. I got a lot from the end, do you know what I mean? But, you know, sorry, Chair, there is no question. Sorry, I've been serious in that.
Oh,
I'm
right,
feeling frustrating. So at the annual members meeting, we clearly had, I give notice to this question. We clearly had questions about dairy food
Yes, we did.
from the patient who attended.
We did.
But given the time, I just wonder if we can agree which director can do a page for next time's board of the actual position on dairy free. You have to do that, Steve.
Yes,
So,
I am happy to give a verbal update.
all right, please, if the chair of that.
Those who weren't at the game, then we have a member of the public patient questioning in really strongly, not only with us, that as someone who is very, very dairy allergic to a very dangerous point, that he could not get staff to understand that he could not be given food that had dairy in it as part of his diet, and indeed there were other clinical things or vaccinations or medication that was dairy in it, weren't they? And he was quite literally, you know, they put it, his life was at risk.
Yeah, and I promised to bring this up, so I apologise for the guessing.
No,
This man.
Point. Thank you. With that, I will resolve.
So we hear from Steve, so.
Oh, sorry, Steve, you've been in and out. You've taken
No, no,
it.
in response to have a full menu and non-dairy products. So we cook fresh and local produce, cook freeze. So if it's identified and that somebody has a number of allergies, we can cater that in our central cooking. And welcome anybody to come and have a look as well, Claire stopped out to show you around and how we have local produce according to children.
Thanks so much.
There is the issue of medication, but thank you, Steve. I mean, I don't know how. I don't particularly think we bring it back, but if medication has dairy in it,
Or if we don't know.
or if we don't know,
It's
then
either-
it's not a
no,
thing.
I think it's.
Would it be helpful if I worked with Steve Davies to produce the
It's just about people checking that
Yeah.
before they give somebody something, that there's nothing in it that they're allergic to.
Essentially, every medication has a list of kind of the active ingredients,
Oh,
and then
right,
the excipients, kind of, you know, things that people, you know,
Yeah.
not the active ingredients, but people might react to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is kind of in all the boxes of medication is whether or not people are checking that.
Yeah.
But there are kind of resources where you can kind of search to kind of find medicate, alternative forms which wouldn't have that. I suppose I can quite quickly get an update of how easy it is to access that.
Yeah.
Helpful.
Yeah,
Helpful
yeah.
to folks as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Especially that just quick AI report.
Clinical medicine advice.
But really scary about lactose in
Yeah.
inhalers. I mean, again, that's cross contamination from Russia as well. He was anaphylactic this time.
Yeah.
So a bit like peanut allergy basis so cooked, but if someone uses the knife that they cut the butter and sandwich with.
Yeah, she was very, very well.
It's standard in canteen in the kitchen or extent, but yeah, that's what I recommend. This was a particular issue about aspirin.
Yeah.
Which we know that there are small trace in a multitude of medication. But what that's highlighted, obviously, or where that specific medication is ordered,
Right.
So I think largely there's some point where it's thank you, Steve. I think clearly there's a point about our staff's awareness of these arrangements, which is the other point, albeit, and for clarity, the ward he attended was a Woodlands ward at Rotherham, it's no longer open. But yeah, let's just give that a little bit of thought as well.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very good point. I will resolve that because of publicity, because publicity will be prejudicial to the public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business being transacted. Public and the press are excluded from the remainder of the meeting, which we will conclude. Thank everybody. Thanks, Lee. Hope you're feeling much better. And we'll take just 5 minutes if anybody needs a comfort break before we start the meeting.
And then we 3:30, 4:15, so you're
That is my rule.
okay, that's fine, let's clarify that.
Please have a very, very bad first report. And she's more or less recovered, or not recovered enough to count. She's had a really rough time.
Yeah.
Still drive home.
I can't wait to see how you are into the